Merry meet and let's welcome in spring together. I have a free event for you. The spring renewal event is happening March 19th and 20th, but you must register to join us. So visit the link in the show notes or visit leandrawitchwood.com to register. Blessed be and happy spring. This morning, I almost decorated my walls with scrambled eggs. Welcome to the Unbound Priestess podcast, a transformative space where we delve into potent conversations, guided practices, and profound teachings. I stood in the kitchen holding my spatula, attempting to place some simple scrambled eggs over my avocado toast. And each time I placed them, they fell over, splat. And yeah, I tried a couple of times to plate my food the way I wanted it plated, with no success. And it was at this moment I felt rage building inside of me. I felt a very real urge to fling those eggs across the room and onto the wall. Not metaphorically, not suggestively, but literally. There they are on my spatula, ready to be flung. Eggs on the wall. That'd be a great mess to clean up later, right? Nothing was wrong with the eggs. The eggs were doing egg things. Gravity was doing gravity things. But inside me, an absolute agitation and irritation, a borderline rage was bubbling to the surface and pushing my limits beyond what the situation warranted. It's the kind of irritation that makes you wonder if you finally snapped. If the universe is playing some weird, unnecessary practical joke that you cannot take. And to be fair, it was already a rough week. I've already been putting out fires. I've been feeling the weight of the world on my shoulders with the social, the economic, the political strain, the ridiculousness that is happening with our world right now, the inhumanity of it. And it's only Wednesday, right? My week had already been jam-packed, full of stress. So now my damn eggs would not cooperate. And that was enough to send me nearly over the edge. Let me back up and give you some context on why I was about to lose my shit on some eggs. I am about 7 days into a 10-day attunement program, which has been challenging me in many ways I was not expecting. I am being asked to address shadows that I forgot existed, that I developed really good coping mechanisms around. I wish I could say that this moment came to me or came up during times of extreme stress in my life. Direct stress, not the existential crises that we're experiencing secondhand. On paper, my life is stable. My work is absolutely meaningful. My spiritual practice is active and abundant. I intentionally chose to step into this program, this 10-day program, which I'm only 7 days in, because I wanted to refine my magic. I wanted to hit reset. I wanted to pull myself back down to the baseline, the foundation, so I could be clear, so I can remove those long-standing blocks and move forward with more coherence. The root of my actions was to become more productive, to be more grounded, not ready to fling eggs across the wall. But that's the challenge that we face when we are digging into those long-standing blocks and shadows. So here I am, standing there at the stove with a poorly cooperating breakfast, 1 inch away from redecorating the kitchen. And this agitation, this burst of irritation, borderline rage, was my first clue that this program was working. When we talk about shadows and shadow work, we often see it described as some sort of poetic descent, a candlelit journey inward, a brave, empowered reclaiming of self. And sometimes it is, it can be. But often, shadow work arrives sideways. It shows up as disproportionate irritation, sudden fatigue, emotional volatility, which doesn't make sense in the moment. Eggs on the wall doesn't make sense, right? It's a short fuse that crops up, a full spiral over something objectively small. Shadow work doesn't always feel like insight or revelation or that clearing of the fog. Often it feels like discomfort with no clear source. I am a seasoned shadow work practitioner and master facilitator. I have been doing this for over a decade with myself and as I lead others through this process. Even now, I still get smacked sideways. Ironically, this proverbial smack in the face is a key indicator that we are close to some breakthrough. Most often, I find this happens when we are deep in shadow work, when we are taking it very seriously, when we are embedding ourselves in the process and not skimming the surface. When we are not engaged in this work passively, we give it potency. We allow true and lasting change to rise and be claimed. And when that discomfort arises, while you're actively working on manifesting, while you're trying to raise your vibration, align your energy, or call something meaningful into your life, it can feel especially unsettling. There is a quiet fear that creeps. Is what I'm doing wrong? Am I making it worse? Making it worse is one of the biggest fears most people have, and one of the biggest reasons why people abandon this work before it becomes useful. Coupled with that intense aggravation and static we experience right before that clarity hits, this work can sometimes be unbearable. I mentioned before that I decided to participate in a 10-day attunement program, and I had just completed day 7. And this wasn't my first rodeo. I've been guiding others through similar processes, programs. I have guided myself. I have been guided through programs like this many times. I also understand the mechanics. And you would think that being as seasoned as I am, I would be ready for it, right? I respect the process, but the shadow can be sneaky. And day 7, case in point, even those of us who are familiar with the shadow can still be surprised by it. I entered this reset feeling prepared, curious, open, maybe even a little confident, cocky even, maybe that's why I got knocked sideways, right? I expected clarity. I expected refinement. I expected an identity shift. I expected my mindset to evolve. I did not expect the hiccup to be as big as it was. What I did not expect was the level of shadow I would dredge up would be something so deeply buried and so viciously poignant. And the thing is, this shadow was it was a simple shadow. It was deceptively simple. The fact that I have learned to cope with this shadow instead of heal it. And once those places are touched, once those realizations are made, the body responds before the mind has a chance to intervene. I think the reason this work was so potent at this time, it has to do with the timing. The thing about blocks, especially deep rooted ones, is that they're not just beliefs floating around in the mind. They're embedded patterns. They're embedded patterns that trigger our nervous system to respond. Emotional reflexes that are built from years of lived experience, trauma, disappointment, betrayal. I was finally ready to address these blocks. I finally had the capacity, the language to name them, to see them and work with them and change the narrative around them. And when you begin dismantling these patterns, the system that worked to keep the patterns intact reacts. For me, it showed up as irritability, resistance, a desire to disengage. I was emotionally off kilter. Small inconveniences felt huge. My tolerance dipped to dangerous levels. I began to question myself more than usual. There were moments when I thought, this feels destabilizing. Shouldn't spiritual work make me calmer than this? And of course, most spiritual work can. But shadow work, like I said, comes in sideways sometimes. This is when most people stop. This is when the work becomes too much or not aligned or triggering in a bad way. And sometimes, yes, we need to stop. Sometimes, yes, it may be time to take a step back. Shadow work can shine a light on the core of our dysfunction and remind us that the stories we tell ourselves are lies. It can show us exactly how we get in our own way, how we participate and manifest and perpetuate our own misery. This is when we need solid support. Sometimes containers are not equipped for this depth of work, making them unsafe and poorly led. When we're experiencing the collapse of an old internal structure, one that has been quietly running the show for many, many years, we need grounding, stable support. Sadly, this is where the program I was in failed me. It didn't have a support system. I was on my own. If I did not know what I was doing, if I didn't already know how to address the shadow and recognize what the shadow was doing in that moment, I would have quit. And I would have quit without a safety net. I was alone in this work. If I were an inexperienced practitioner or someone brand new to these kinds of discoveries, this would have been an end game moment with a potential for a serious spiral, an unhealthy spiral. Way worse than eggs on the wall. Shadow work often requires support. Here's something I want to say plainly because it matters. Feeling emotionally unstable during shadow work or manifestation work does not mean you're failing. It does not mean you are broken. It does not mean you are losing control. It often means you are becoming aware. Awareness without coping mechanisms can feel raw, unfiltered, loud. The difference between spiraling and integration is not about discomfort arising. It's whether we stay present with it long enough to learn its details, to learn what exactly is showing up here. This work is not passive. It's an active, sovereign choice. After I contemplated decorating the walls with eggs, I posted a message in my friend group about this impulse, about what I was going through. Shortly after, one of my friends from this group called me to make sure I was okay. We talked about it and other things for about an hour, and that made all the difference in the world. Suddenly, the seething beast in my head was soothed, and I could think clearly. I chose to continue the work, not by forcing positivity, not by pushing through it, but by slowing down, by observing my reactions instead of identifying with them, instead of shoving them down, by letting myself be uncomfortable without immediately trying to fix it. That phone call led me to a choice that changed everything. Because once I stopped resisting discomfort, the information began to surface. Patterns became visible. Old narratives revealed their deeply embedded hooks. I could see how certain manifestation blocks, how certain blocks in my own energetic field and secret desires were centered around worthiness. They were centered around safety, about responsibility, about who I could become if I allowed certain things to arrive into my life. Something subtle but powerful happens when you stay with the work, when you stay with it long enough. You don't stop having reactions, but you do start recognizing them sooner. You notice the spiral before it takes over. You pause instead of exploding. You develop compassion for yourself instead of judging yourself and condemning yourself. You begin to respond instead of reacting in ways that matter. By the end of this reset, this attunement, I hadn't magically fixed everything. That's not how real work functions. I did gain something far more valuable. I gained clarity. I gained my solid foundation. I gained clarity around my blocks, not as an abstract concept, but as lived patterns. I understood how hidden beliefs had subtly constrained my magic. I didn't realize I was still holding on to them. I didn't realize they were still there. I could see where force had replaced trust and where rigidity had replaced openness. My magical and manifestation practice softened and has become more effective. My magic now feels less performative and more nourishing. That's what happens when we slow down during shadow work, when shadow work is allowed to do its job. Once I allowed the energy to flow, I found new inspiration and Coven programs downloading into my creative field faster than I could write them. Which is why I have created for you the 5-Day Witches Reset. The 5-Day Witches Reset is an experience I'm offering to you as a 5-day audio program so that you don't decorate your walls with eggs. Many of you are right now, standing at the edge of a breakthrough, unsure of why things feel blocked, heavy, or emotionally charged. This reset is designed to be supportive, contained, and grounded, a place to explore blocks without unnecessary overwhelm, to understand your patterns without self-blame, to work with your magic in a way that feels human and sustainable. This is an audio-based program for ease, with community support for reflection and integration. It is intentionally curated with a flexible structure to help you stay with the process long enough to walk away with something real. Not just insight, but integration. So I invite you to sign up today. You can check out my website, leandrawitchwood.com, to learn more, or check the link in the show notes. If you've been feeling irritated, stuck, emotionally raw, or quietly frustrated with your witchcraft journey and practice, you are not doing things wrong. You may be closer to the truth than you realize. Shadow work asks us to stay, to listen. And when we do, we don't just manifest more, we manifest differently, with substance, with meaning. And sometimes it takes a pan of scrambled eggs to change it all. Blessed be. Breathe in with me. Hold. Now release. One more time. Breathe in. Hold and release. Resets like this are essential for our nervous system, for our stress levels, bringing us back to a foundation where we can think clearly, where we have more energy. And this is why I created the Witches Reset. This is a 5-day audio program where I guide you through essential practices to bring you back to your baseline so you can think clearly and build something meaningful. To learn more, check out the link in the show notes or visit my website, leandrawitchwood.com. And I look forward to seeing you in the program. For now, let's get back to the episode.